Prynhawn da, croeso cynnes I chi gyd.
Good afternoon and warm welcome.
Very warm welcome to you all to this special webinar that we have organised for our new ambassadors and old ambassadors, of course, and our partners also. Most of this webinar will be done through the medium of Welsh. Therefore, if you would like an English translation, then you will need to go to the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see that there is a globe icon and it will say interpretation. And you will need to choose the English option for the English translation. And I just deud hwnna eto. I'm going to switch into Welsh in a moment myself. So I'll just say that again because I can see a few others just joining us. Very warm welcome to you all. The majority of this webinar will be through the medium of Welsh. So if you would like an English translation, please go to the bottom of your screen right now and you'll see a globe icon and hopefully you will see interpretation underneath it, and please choose the English option. If there are any problems, please feel free to put some messages in the chat. Our IT guru Rob is here on hand behind the scenes to answer some questions because I'm sure I won't be able to help with anything technical of that nature. Okay, so I'm just going to switch into Welsh. Felly, croeso cynnes.
A warm welcome to you all here. It's really lovely to see as many of you here joining us this afternoon. I'll just introduce myself and everybody who's on the screen. I'm Angela Jones, the Partnership Manager for the National Park. And we also have Catherine Glynn, who is the WIDVA Partnership Officer in the National Park, and our line manager, the head of the engagement section and communication, Helen Pye, Claire Holmes and Mary Williams are joining from Cymdeithas Eryri. And it's a great pleasure to introduce our chair, Tracy Evans, who is sitting on the National Park Authority, but is also the Chief Executive of the Outdoor Partnership. So over to you, Tracy. Thanks very much, Angela. A very warm welcome, everybody, to the 5th meeting, I believe, of the Ambassadors Scheme. So we have an hour to go through the 4 items on the agenda today. I'll run through the agenda quickly before I hand back over to Angela. We have 3 updates today. An update on the Ambassador Scheme in Eryri. Angela will be doing that. Then Mary and Claire from Cymdeithas Eryri will be giving us an update on the volunteer plan for this year. And then at the end, Helen is going to give us an update on the comms plan for this year. And there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. But of course, you're very welcome to use the chat box if you have any questions as the presentations are going on, and we'll try and run through all of the questions and answer as many as we can before the end of the hour. So on that note, Angela, over to you. Thanks, Tracy. Just a quick word to say thanks from the bottom of our hearts to all of you. It's been very heartening to see as many of you who have shown an interest in the Ambassador Scheme. By yesterday, 424 of you have become bronze ambassadors, 329 silver ambassadors, and 317 of you have gone the whole hog to the Gold Award, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. If you are expecting resources to arrive in the post, they're on their way. We have to explain to you that we are doing it in a very detailed way. It's not an automatic system. There are actual people putting the packs together, so it does take a bit of time. So please bear with us while we're working everything out, but they're on their way to you. We've had loads of very positive feedback, and the last module, for now at least, is being launched by the end of this month, and that's special feature 6, which is special features in the park. So we will have covered all of our special features in the pack and all of the necessary modules online. We'll be reviewing them over the next few weeks, especially to update some of them with information about the messages about reopening after COVID. And Helen will run through that in greater detail later on in this session. Some of you have asked how you can be useful as ambassadors for the area, and we've had really interesting questions from some of you in England, one from Germany, and in fact one from America, and I know you're attending today, so a very warm welcome to you. So one of the main aims of this game is that it's about spreading our core messages together. Unfortunately, being an ambassador doesn't give us additional rights at all, and we of course have to follow the rules like everybody else, but I'm hoping that the plan has made people feel more confident in passing on the messages and stories from the area and facts about what makes the area so exceptional, and some of the core messages about looking after and conserving such a special area as Eryri. So what next? We are going to continue to develop the content of the plan, and if you do have any ideas about what to include, that will be fabulous. We are intending to have modules on some of the flagship projects that are going on in the area at the moment. For example, a specific module on the Carneddau and one on the Celtic rainforests. And we're also working with Gwynedd Council on one on the nomination for the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Whenever a time allows us to do so, we would like to offer workshops and discussions and site visits as a part of the plan. And I know that a lot of you are actually thinking what's going to be happening next year because the award is running out at the end of 2021. So we're working on at the moment is a refresher module for you to be able to work through it, and that will automatically update all of your awards for 2022. But we'll be working out technically how to do that with a company who's actually running the website. We have had a couple of inquiries from the press who would like to talk to some of you. So Katrin at the moment is drafting an email to go out. Obviously, we won't be sharing any of your details because of data protection. GDPR is very important to us. But if there are some of you who are interested in talking with the media as an ambassador and what you feel about the plan or scheme, Katrin will be in touch with you about that. We are also working with other authorities over the area with this plan, and it's worth saying that Conway Council have successfully launched their scheme this week as well. So if you're looking for a new challenge, there's an opportunity for you there. And I know that there are some other questions that have come through, especially or specifically one to see if it would be possible to have all of the resources as a hard copy. And we're actually working with some of the ambassadors with regard to developing that idea. So I think all of the questions that have already come through will be answered via the items on the agenda. If not, I'll come back to those at the end of the session. So back to you, Tracy. Yes, thank you very much, Angela. There are no questions in the chat box at the moment. So any questions regarding the actual plan or scheme, please get in touch with Angela. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Claire and Mary from Cymdeithas Eryri. You're going to give us an update on the new volunteer plan for this year and possibly the volunteering opportunities for ambassadors in the park. So I look forward to hearing your presentation. Over to you.
Hi, Mary Williams Ydri.
I'm Mary Williams.
Swyddog Cadwraeth.
I'm the Conservation Officer
Cymdeithas Eryri, so
for Cymdeithas Eryri.
Conservation Officer with the Snowdonia Society. I'll speak mainly in English. So there's a break from having to use the translation. The last year, you may well have been aware, or may not have been aware, that there was quite a big volunteer project involving volunteers out greeting visitors who were flocking to the national park after the first lockdown. We were greeting visitors, advising people, and also clearing up a lot of litter. And it's been decided to repeat that project this year, but make it bigger. So that's what I'm going to tell you about. So it's called Eryri, or the English name for this year is going to be Care for Snowdonia. So I'll just show you a little short presentation. I'll keep it very short, and afterwards I'll hand over to my colleague Claire, who will be saying a bit more about the messages that we'll be wanting to share with visitors and everybody really this summer to keep people safe. Can everybody see the screen at the moment?
Yeah, we can see it, Mary. It's not in presentation mode. I don't know.
Not in present. No, it will be now. There we are.
Perfect.
Any problems, you can put it in the chat box. So the situation last year, this is just one example of a picture of how busy it was last year. So this is from the Ogwen Valley. We had cars parked either side of the road quite often, since this was taken either in July or in August. So everything I'm talking about last year was in July and August last year. So even though there are car parks, there were more cars than spaces, so people parked on the road as well. So I've got some little points in Welsh and in English here. So it was very busy, and visitors who would normally have gone abroad came to Snowdonia. I think it's a bit hard to tell, but we think there's perhaps more people than usual. Certainly the number of visitors was squeezed into a smaller time frame, having been under lockdown conditions earlier in the summer. And the problems we had were people not knowing where to go, where to park, where the footpaths began, not really knowing what you need to get the mountain, or that it would be cold on top and things like that, not really prepared very well. There were plenty of people who were prepared very well, but because there were so many people, we did meet a lot of ill-prepared people, and unfortunately there was a lot of litter. So here are some of our volunteers on Snowdon last year. Looking happy. They did very well to maintain, being in a positive frame of mind throughout. We had 54 volunteers over 8 weekends, which were Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so full on weekends. Not all of those people came out every time. We had about 16 people every day. We had to keep numbers down for social distancing. And yes, they were there to give information to people, to just be a friendly, welcoming presence in case people did have a question. They could come and approach us, and of course clearing litter. I've written there, it was planned very quickly, but this year we're building on and learning from last year, and it should be even better. So the litter, we did cover a few areas. So we had groups going through Llanberis, up the path to Snowdon, just as far as the halfway cafe. We had groups going in cars, stopping along at the car parks and laybys from Nantperis, Penagwryd, all the way around to the Crellin car park at the bottom of the Snowdon Ranger Park car park path, and in the Ogwen Valley as well, near Cymydwell. We had about 546 bags full of rubbish that we collected over that time, carrier bags full, but that was a shocking amount, particularly when people were picking up litter, say on a Saturday, and they knew that people had been to the exact same place on the Friday and cleared the area. So the litter seemed to be just kept coming. It was quite constant. This picture in the middle is of myself, actually. This is on the very last day. We had some of our volunteers walk right up to the top of Snowdon to bring down some rubbish that the Snowdon volunteer wardens had left there. So in addition to the Croeso Nôl project, Welcome Back project, which is what we called it last year, our 54 volunteers, there were also, of course, the Snowdon volunteer wardens who are out every summer on Snowdon, and they were bringing rubbish down as well. So what the number that I quoted there does not include the rubbish that they collected, apart from about 12 bin bags worth that they just could not possibly carry down. Every so often they had to leave some rubbish up at the Summit Cafe, and we cleared that away at the end. And you can see in the picture there, we also had, just to show that there was a lot of fly camping, people camping not in campsites without permission, and unfortunately scorching the grass with barbecues and leaving litter as well. So that was the situation last year. I apologise for the small writing here. This year, I'll speed up just to not take so much time. We're going to have an even bigger team, and it will be called Carry Eryri, or Care for Snowdonia. So we are really keen for lots of volunteers to come and help us if at all possible. It's going to be much bigger. It's going to be covering 12 locations this time, including the south of the park, at Cadair Idris and Llyntegid at Bala. And we're hoping to start at Easter, but it depends on coronavirus and regulations and permission to sort of work together as groups outside. So the start date is not entirely, it's not definite yet because of coronavirus, but we hope to start as soon as possible after Easter, and continue right the way through to the end of September. So plenty of opportunity for you to get involved. We'd love local people to get involved. We'd love the ambassadors to get involved, because you've got the knowledge, you've got the skills, you'd be the ideal people to welcome people and to just make sure that people are safe. So the email address at the moment is, if you're interested, you can email Etta Trumper at the Snowdonia National Park email address there, as we will have a more streamlined way for people to register to volunteer for this, as much or as little as you want. And when that's up and running, that will be advertised. But for now, you can express an interest by emailing Etta. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope we can have some of your involvement. I'll hand over to Claire.
Diolch, Mary. Gobeithio bod pawb yn gallu clywed fi.
Thanks, Mary. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Pnawn da pawb.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm Claire.
Swyddog ymgysylltu
I'm the engagement officer for Cymdeithas Eryri.
I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation. I have been having laptop issues this week, so apologies if it cuts out. If it does, I'll freestyle, but hopefully this will be fine. Give it a couple of seconds to load. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
We can see that, Claire, your sound is quite low. I'm not sure if you can turn it up a little, but we can hear you okay. We could hear you okay.
Can you hear me okay? Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry. I'm having some technical problems this week, so thumbs up if you can hear me. Great. Okay. So yeah, the main aim of our campaign this year, as part of the volunteering and the messaging, is you know, to make this coming season as sustainable and enjoyable as possible for visitors and local residents, and minimise those impacts on the national park. We're going to be working with our partners at the National Park Authority, Snowdon Partnership, and we've received pretty generous funding from Welsh Government as part of this campaign. So hopefully I can. You know, we all know the importance of digital communications, especially you know, these days, this season. For better or for worse, we're seeing an increase of use of phones for information finding in the mountains, and we want to work positively with that and create a series of messages along a very specific timeline over the next season as part of Eryri that will, you know, work within this trend to tackle the predicted rise in things like litter, you know, fruit peel. We found that a big problem, and waste, unfortunately. And things like fly camping, which Mary mentioned, is becoming more of an issue this year. Overcrowding on certain mountains like with Snowdon, and of course traffic and congestion. Last year, as Mary said, we had Welcome Back, and this year within Eryri, more of a focus on digital cross-platform communications. And we're working with the digital, you know, very consistent and targeted messaging through the season at the peak times like Easter, half term and the summer holidays, to convey useful information to people, and with a real kind of positive slant, because I think that's, we know that that's the best way to really communicate with people. We want people to enjoy their time in the national park and to respect the nature and also the people that live here. Yeah, so, you know, we don't know what the situation is going to be at Easter, but as Helen said in a meeting recently, we think it is going to be busy with what the kind of situation will be regulation wise. So what we're going to be doing is putting out lots of messaging with regards to planning ahead, and hopefully, you know, people will be then clicking through from the social media that we're putting out to our website, with which will have more information for people. Yeah. Our handles are there if you're interested. Please jot them down or find us, because we'll be putting out lots of information through our social media channels, and we
Claire, it might be worth you turning your video off, you know, because you're freezing. Did you mind?
Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah. Are you back with us, Claire?
Hi, sorry. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. It might be better for you to leave your video off, you know, your camera off. If you've got...
Yeah, I've turned it off. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but yeah, the main point is, you know, jot down our social media handles and get sharing once the material starts coming out, because it will very soon. And of course, you know, to make a difference, it's working together that's going to be this. My email address is at the bottom. If anyone has any questions or would like to support the campaign, please get in touch. And yeah, if you see our volunteers out in the mountains over the summer or the spring, give them a nod of support, take a picture and share, and keep sharing those messages across your platforms. And yeah, I think that's my bit said. So hopefully caught most of that. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Claire. Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti. A diolch yn fawr iawn, Mary.
Thanks very much, Claire, and thanks, Mary. Very interesting. I know myself last year how successful the scheme was. There was a lot of very positive feedback from local people, volunteers and visitors alike. So it's a very good scheme, and I'm very glad to hear that it's going to carry on this year and going to be bigger. great, and it's a great opportunity today for people to sign up today and volunteer. So get in touch with Mary and Claire. You've shared your contact details there. There's somebody who lives in Oxfordshire and asking how they could help with the scheme. There are lots of questions coming in at the moment.
O'n i mynd i ddod i fewn ar hwn, Tracy, achos nes i weld y
I was
cwestiwn.
just going to come in here because I saw this question. I thought, I can answer that. I'll talk about this a little bit later on because it's so lovely to see that we're getting national and international ambassadors in places like America. We really think it's fantastic. We love it. That people love the area as much as we do who live in Wales. And I think if you can't visit, one of the biggest challenges that we have this summer is to try to get messages out there to people. And I'll talk a bit more about this. So as far as sharing messages and information is concerned, that'll help us so much with regard to people who are intending to visit the area. Totally agree with that, Helen. Thanks for that. There were several questions that have come in now. One question is asking, how is volunteering with Cymdeithas Eryri different to volunteering with the National Park? Well, the organisations came together last year in order to respond to the big challenge of visitors coming to the park. But all of the organisations shared resources jointly, and it just shows how successful it is to cooperate with each other. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Helen. Yeah, just to say the scheme that's just been presented, that's a joint scheme that's being run by the National Park Outdoor Partnership and Cymdeithas Eryri. That's the joint scheme, so you'll be volunteering for all of us, so to speak. There are several questions. Do you want to keep the questions until the end for the Q&A session? Is that what we'll do? Because a lot of the answers to these questions will probably be included in your presentation in any case. So on that note, over to you, Helen. Thanks, Tracy. I'll just share my screen with you.
Ga I just checio fo chi'n gallu gweld hwnna?
Can you give me this thumbs up just to show that you can see it? It's not in presentation mode though. I'll try again.
Be am rwan?
Perffaith, yeah.
How about
Great.
now? Yes, it's perfect. Computer needed the restart, I think. Okay, anyway, thank you. It's been a very interesting year last year. It was challenging when things reopened, but I strongly believe if we hadn't had the unbelievable assistance that we got from the volunteers and our ambassadors and the staff who were working on the ground, it would have been a very different season. So although we do have some challenges, everybody worked so hard to make it a successful season. And the second the season came to an end, that's when the work started on planning for this season. Because what we've certainly seen, what COVID has actually done is it's created a real feeling of appreciation for the outdoors and the countryside. All of the information that we see predicts that we're going to have a very busy season, which is going to be brilliant for the businesses that have really struggled during the past year with tourism. And we're going to try to do whatever we can do in order to ensure that some of the challenges that we saw last year, that we have plans in place in order to try and get to grips with those. So I will be talking a bit about the plan for the season, important dates, likely challenges, preparatory work behind the scenes, a bit about transport and parking. That's Angela and Katrin are doing at the moment on that. And of course, the plans relating to the communication plan.
Okay, right. Gwbo pam ma' hwnna di mynd reit i'r diwedd anyway. Da chi wedi gweld y presentation i gyd rwan? So
We've
no
seen all of the presentation, now it's coming back to front. But anyway, so important dates for this season. This sets out a bit of when we're expecting things to actually start. This relates to our communication plan, but it's relevant to other things as well. So already we've seen some changes in Wales regarding the COVID rules. On the 13th of March, we moved from staying at home to stay local. Then the Welsh Government is going to undertake another review this Friday. And what they've said is that they're going to review is potentially the stay local will change to people from Wales will be able to travel in Wales, and the potential that self-contained accommodation will be able to open from the 27th. We don't actually know if that will happen yet. Obviously, it's down to the data, but that's what we're preparing for. So we ourselves won't actually know until Friday when these statements will be made and what's been actually decided, but at least we'll have to have plans in place for what we're expecting to happen. Just a quick note as well, the Pyrda period is starting. What that means is that because we're approaching an election, there are limitations regarding what information can be put out there, and we have to be careful that it doesn't come across as political in any shape or form. Then the Easter holidays, that's coming up in Wales next week onwards for 2 weeks. And also England will be on the 29th. What's been planned is that they're moving from the stay home rule to the stay local rule. All of these factors mean that we're thinking potentially next week can be quite busy, so we have plans in place for that. It makes it difficult to communicate because 70% of our visitors usually come from England. The other 5% come from Scotland and about 3% from Ireland. At the moment, we're trying to communicate with different audiences regarding the different rules. As far as England is concerned, next week, people won't be able to travel any further than their local vicinity. But what we're expecting is that people are so fed up with the rules, we may see some visitors coming from England as well. So that will potentially create some challenges for us. Moving on, the Easter holidays will start on the 1st. And non-essential retail in Wales is supposed to reopen later on in April as well. And from April the 12th in England, people from the same family will be able to go on holiday in the UK. So that gives a bit of a picture regarding when we're expecting things to really get busy in Eryri, and our plans regarding work on the ground and communication works around those actual dates. So at the moment, we're in the zero messaging stage. And essentially what that means is that we're working on communicating Welsh Government messages regarding COVID and what we're doing in order to prepare for the season. And at some point, we will be moving to phase 1. It's very difficult to know when this will happen, and it's pretty sensitive to try and communicate this with different audiences about the rules. But we are expecting to go into that phase at the end of this week, quite tentatively, really, and quite full blown from April onwards. But we will keep you in the loop regarding when those dates are more certain. And it's also worth noting that Visit Wales also have plans in place with the National Promise scheme regarding looking after Wales and the countryside. It's a lovely campaign that they have. And National Resources Wales, DEFRA and Natural England are, and also they're working on a campaign for the countryside code, so you'll be seeing that pretty soon. This is an idea of the timescale that we're playing with at the moment and the challenges relating to trying to communicate these without conveying the wrong message to people. What we're planning for this season and what we're expecting to see is it'll be the same challenges that we saw last year. This all relates to numbers. So the more people that visit the area, the same type of issues that we're trying to see essentially. This is from the Wyddfa Summit last year. That's a potential issue that we may see this year as well. The no wild camping or fly camping, this was a major problem last year, and from what we heard from English National Parks, it's starting to become an issue there already, so there are plans in place for that. The parking issue is something that we saw last year, and of course litter. We've heard a lot about litter as well, the bane of our lives basically. So as far as planning or plans are concerned for the season, these are the main issues that we have to deal with. You've heard that we as a national park are going to be working cooperatively with the Cymdeithas Eryri, the outdoor partnership and the brilliant volunteer program. If you do have time to join this, it's a fantastic program. I'm so grateful to everybody who joined us last year. It made such a difference to the national park regarding the litter and also the information that people got. So thanks, a huge thanks really to the people who volunteered on this last year. Where parking is concerned, there are long-term plans and there are short-term plans as well. So as far as the short term is concerned, there will be pre-booking going live on the 8th of April. Until then, people will be able to park in Panapas. From the 8th onwards, the pre-booking will start. That's the timetable that we've had working with Transport Wales, so we're getting it in place as soon as we possibly can. There will be a lot of information on this available in the package that we'll be sending out. I'll talk a bit more about that later. Also, we'll be providing more buses with Gwynedd and Conwy Council. There will be buses every quarter of an hour running up from Llanberis and Sperris, and there will be additional buses in the Ogwen Valley as well. And on the weekends, during the school holidays, there will be buses running every hour on the weekends from Bangor up to Ogwen. So hopefully that will help. In the long term, regarding the grand scheme plans that Angela and Catherine are working on with parking and transport at the moment, that they'll be working throughout the winter to consult with local communities. That was the initial step in trying to improve the transport and parking in the area. and that was discussing with local communities about what they'd like to see happening and what would be useful for them. That work has just finished. There will be a little bit more work to be undertaken with the community in Betos, because we've felt from the online sessions that we've held, perhaps the representation doesn't quite reflect the feelings in the community. So there will be drop-in sessions in Betos, hopefully in June, when the COVID rules will enable us to do that. There will also be a report on the consultation with communities coming out soon, and it will be shared with those communities. And then we'll start developing things further from there. So that whole process will be happening over the 4, 5, 6 next months, and we'll be keeping you in the loop on the packing and transport work that's ongoing. But it's certainly true to say that the momentum is really starting to take hold now. I'm sure it will be difficult this year because there may be expectations that everything has been sorted with regard to transport and parking. All I can say is Rome wasn't built in a day, and we really need to make sure that we get this right. So making sure that communities are happy and able to influence on the plans themselves are really important to us. We don't want to rush through things. Okay, so we will also have information going out on parking and transport. A lot of assets have been produced. This is one example. We're trying to convey to people when the busy times are and when the less busy times are, to try and channel people to come during the less busier times during the season. So this information will be available on our website, but there will be also be assets available for you as ambassadors, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. A bit of information on the Sherpa there. This is an example of one of the assets that we are producing in anticipation of the season. We're trying to encourage people with the fly camping issue. We're really trying to encourage people to book beforehand rather than coming to the area and finding that they're having to camp on the side of the road, that type of thing. And the nature of the messages this year are trying to keep the messages positive and framing it as useful information for people rather than telling people what to do, essentially, because really have had enough of that approach. So that takes us neatly into the campaign, the communication campaign. Like I said, there are lots of plans in the pipeline, and what we're intending to do is we've created the comms pack for you as ambassadors, and that will be shared hopefully today or tomorrow morning. In that, we have included things like the code messages that we're planning for the season, what we're trying to achieve with the campaign, who the audiences are that we're trying to engage with, and there will also be assets that we'll be able to share with you. The comms pack will be available. We'll be sending a link where you can download the comms pack, and as the season goes along, there will be more assets, such as one of these travelers tips, for example, in front of you now. You'll be able to share those, and we'll include those in the link that we'll be sending you, and you're welcome to use those assets as ambassadors so that you can spread the word. And if there's one thing that we've learned from last year, how effective is it when everybody says the same message? That's something that we'd really appreciate having your help with. For us as a national park, it's one thing for us to share the information, but when it's coming from you as ambassadors, people who are actually living and working in the area, who know the area and love the area, it really does have a huge effect with regard to the nature of the information that's being conveyed, and it really can make a difference. So I'll just say a bit about what we're trying to achieve with the communication this year. One, we're trying to influence where and when people are visiting. For example, that weekends are much busier than during the week. There will be assets relating to that. We're trying to encourage people to come during different times of the year so that not everybody comes during the summer in August on the bank holiday. There are lots of opportunities in September and October as well. And of course, there will be an element as part of the campaign. The hashtag that we'll be using will be plan, discover and protect. And if you can use that hashtag, brilliant, really, because then we can see how far that message is spread. So regard to discovering, it's so that people can discover what's really special about Eryri. It's not about spreading everybody away from the Wyddfa. If you are visiting and if you're thinking about what's really special about Eryri, from the landscape to the language to the history of the area, how can we encourage people to discover those things? The second thing that we're trying to achieve is to try and get people to plan beforehand. If we can get people to plan where they'll be staying overnight, they shouldn't be thinking that they can camp on the side of the road. Encourage people to use camping sites, etc. They'll be so helpful. So there's an emphasis on camping beforehand, certainly, not only on accommodation, but also planning beforehand, booking the car parks such as Panapas, and also planning beforehand with regard to safety. The third thing that we really want to achieve is the message about how people are visiting the area, how people visit and how people look after the area when they do visit. Try and get people to realize the potential of the impact that tourism can have and how they can be a part of the response to that rather than a part of the problem, but in a really positive way. Encourage people to use public toilets, encourage people to take their litter home and to help clear litter with the volunteers, encourage people to prepare their kits beforehand and potentially help if they could be a part of the volunteer campaign as well. And the last thing with regard to communication is we really want to make an effort to ensure that the communities in the area feel that we're all doing our best to make sure that the season goes as safely and as well as possible. If there's anything that we can do to share the work that we do as ambassadors, partners and volunteers, that would be fantastic, because it then creates more confidence in our communities that we're all on the case. We've planned beforehand and we do have those plans in place. It's also worth emphasizing that we need to engage with the new audiences that we have. There are 350% uplift among young people now that visit the national parks over the country. So we're going to be shifting the way in which we communicate with people. We're going to be using a lot more media such as Instagram. As far as our core messages are concerned, I'll just run through this really quickly. I've mentioned it a bit in the objectives, really. The messages that we're trying to push are that we should book up beforehand, prepare beforehand, think about when to visit, when's the best time to visit. Is it during the week? Is it outside the season to avoid the peak times? Think about I'd look for something different and discover what's different about Eryri and look after the landscape and the area. Like I mentioned, there will be a lot of assets available for you. There will be some that will be released during the next few weeks, and there will be further tranches being released later on in the season. And that's basically it. Thank you very much. That's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm very willing to take questions from people in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Helen, lot fawr o gwybodaeth yn fan'na.
Thanks very much, Helen. There's a lot of information there to share with everybody. I've been trying to run through the chat box to try and have a look at the questions, but I think you've responded to a lot of you with your presentation. There's one regarding the weather station in Hafod Eryri. Is that going to be reinstated this year? Do you know? I'm not sure who would be able to answer that. It was linked to the app, I believe, Catherine. Do you know the answer to that? Rhys Weldon is our new warden. He's the new warden for the north, and he's leading on this. And the weather station should be up and running again and linked to the app once again. There are several people also asking how they can be a part of these different plans. Angela, are you the main point of contact? I've sent my email to some people in the chat already about the ambassador scheme and also Catherine. So you're welcome to get in touch. And like Mary and Claire said, they can get through them or Etta with the volunteering. Get in touch with me and we can refer people to the right place. You're very welcome to get in touch.
Wel, nes I deleo, sori, pwy bynnag oedd o, cwestiwn.
There was a question in the Q&A as well. Somebody asked, where will be the pre-booking for Panapas? Apologies for that. I deleted the message by mistake. It'll be in Panapas for this season. There was an intention to have it in Ogwen as well, but it hasn't worked in time, unfortunately. But we'll see and adapt as we go along how it works in Panapas. Thanks, Angela. I can't see any more questions. Regarding the question, Tracy, about how can people help, it actually goes back to what I mentioned before. I know that our new ambassador from America, Donald, he was asking how he can help, and he's hoping to visit in November, and Ingrid asked the same, who lives in Oxford. Whatever you can do to spread the messages that I've mentioned, we'll be sending them back to you. I know it feels as if you're not actually here and you can't physically help, but as far as getting the message out there, it really makes a difference to us. So anything you can do to help with that, we really do appreciate that hugely. There is another question that's come up following on from that. I take it that we're okay with the copyright. Whatever we include in the pack, we'll be sharing with our ambassadors via email. You can share it, no problem at all. Another question has come in. Are there any updates on the e-bike scheme? I think that this is a part of the transport and parking strategy. These are the discussions that we've been having with communities in order to ask people where they'd like to see this type of facility. So just like Helen mentioned, we're expecting the report to come back from the company who has been commissioned to undertake the public consultation. So we'll be going back to them to develop that hand in hand with them. Is there any time scale relating to that? We're expecting the report next week, so by the end of March. So we've given the communities the timetable for around the autumn time. That would be a good time to go back to start developing things with them and review things over the summer as well. Great, thanks very much, Angela. There are no further questions at the moment. We have 2 minutes left. I've just seen a question from Mira and Gwyn regarding booking locally or book direct with the business. I've noted that, and we don't have assets at the moment, but I will ask the team whether or not they can do that, something in relation to that. I think that's a really good point that Miran has made. Apologies for that, I missed the actual question.
There was
There are more questions coming in at the moment. Susie is asking, any plans to increase the number of campsites? Back to you, Helen. As a national park, we are not able to specifically influence this issue, but there is a rule that Welsh Government is looking at the moment with relation to planning, where they're looking at doubling the 28-day rule to 56. What that essentially means is that for 28 days of the year, a landowner can set up a campsite without having planning permission. But if it doubles, it means 56 days. And of course, there's pros and cons for that. On the one side, it means that we can create more capacity really quickly. But on the other hand, it potentially means a free-for-all. We're aware of that. We're keeping a close eye on what's happening. And I think it'll be a matter of responding as the year goes on. We're working very closely with Gwynedd Council at the moment in order to try and ensure if there are issues that arise during the year or the season that we do work together on those. And we're expecting that there will be. So we do have other plans in place as well. If you do have any concerns, please can you get in touch with us about that? And a lot of our assets, once again, will be concentrating on those issues. The 28-day rule is not applicable to motorhomes. It's just worth noting that, just for tents only. Thanks, Helen. There's another question from Susie as follows.
What can we do to encourage people to visit other mountains in Eryri? So, eto, Helen.
Once again, Helen. This is part of the discover element that we were referring to. And you will see in the information that we'll be sharing with you, there will be messages regarding how we're intending to convey that. But we really need to be careful that it doesn't move the problems elsewhere. What we've seen in years of experience of managing visitors, you've sent people elsewhere. If the infrastructure isn't there to actually be able to cope with those people, then it just moves the problem and creates a bigger problem. So the infrastructure on the Wyddfa isn't ideal. It's the best infrastructure that we have in Eryri, and certainly in other areas the infrastructure is not there. We don't necessarily want to send people to other mountains, but there are opportunities to encourage people to discover these things during a week rather than a day, say, and I think that will help in bringing more benefits to local communities, for local businesses and outdoor leaders as well. Thanks very much for that, Helen. I'm just looking at the QA box at the moment. There is one relating to parking spaces, the YHA parking, as follows.
The option of using 3 additional spaces in the car park when needed in regards to pre-booking. Will we lose our spaces?
Yeah, mae 'na trafodaethau penodol yn mynd ymlaen hefo'r
There are
YHA.
specific discussions going on with the YHA regarding that point. So those discussions will be continuing. I'm moving to the chat box now. Hopefully I haven't missed anything.
Ti'n neud y dda, Tracy?
You're doing very well, Tracy.
Oedd ddim yn sydyn anyway.
I can't read quickly enough, I don't think. Anyway,
Okay, so mae'n cwestiwn yma gan Andy.
there is a question from Andrew as follows.
Those such as fly camping, what distinction, if any, will be made between this and responsible remote wild camping by outdoor professionals?
Digwydd bod, da ni wedi bod yn trafod
As
hwn
it happens, we have been discussing with this with people like BMC and mountain training as well, and it's a very important point. To be clear, with regard to wild camping, anybody who wants to do wild camping should have permission from the landowner. Technically, there is no right to wild camping. As far as access to land is concerned, there's only the right to walk and take photos. But obviously, over the years, a lot of outdoor leaders and people who enjoy the mountains, it's happened informally. What we will be doing this season is be really clear and use the term fly camping quite clearly, because it's then pretty clear that there's two distinctions between those two types of camping, wild camping and fly camping. Putting up a tent as it gets dark and leaving before the morning and nobody can actually see you there is totally different to the photograph that I showed earlier of people having a huge Glastonbury style tent, litter everywhere, right next to a lake. Those two things are not similar at all. And when we publicly discuss fly camping, this is what we mean by that. And the two things shouldn't be confused with each other. I know last year that people were concerned that the national park were trying to stop people from wild camping, but I want to make it very clear that we're trying to tackle the issue of fly camping. Unfortunately, there aren't national rules where people are able to do wild camping, but it does happen informally. So when you hear us publicly say, if you want to park in the national park, you have to have permission from the landowner. I want you to understand that I'm trying to communicate with a specific audience, which is the audience that doesn't understand the countryside code and will be using the term fly camping when we discuss that. So hopefully that helps to respond to that question, Tracy. Thanks very much, Ellen. There is another one from John. Keeping an eye on planning policy. Lots of getting rid of tent pitches to make room for lodges and motorhomes. If there are any issues regarding planning, can you get in touch with us about specific issues, please? I'm aware of the time. We've run over from about 6 minutes. What we did before was we gathered all of the questions and everything we haven't responded to. We can send them out, the answers with the invitation to the next meeting. We can save the chat and run through the questions, certainly, yes. So on that note, we'll close the meeting. Thanks very much to all of the panelists today and also to the translator. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for coming today. I look forward to working with all of you this year.